It is gush o'clock somewhere, definitely in this house, as we're talking about my favorite books of 2025. I put together a stack of books that is sitting right in front of me that I want to talk with you about today. But before we start doing that, I hope you're comfortable, get some tea. For me, it's iced at the moment because we're already at 80 degrees in California again, so warm. No hot tea for me. And then my candle of choice for the mood is Briarwick's Book Dragon, which is mandarin, pomegranate, and guava, which we are going to light together now. You will not see it in the screen because I have no table somewhere, anywhere close by, but it smells good. I can tell you that much. See? That's what we are going to put on the side right now, just so I can enjoy it. Far away from any books or electronics that can go up, but giving me a good smell, putting me into a fantastic mood. All right, let's talk about my favorite books of 2025. This is not going to be a ranking. This is just the 13 books that I enjoyed the most, that I can't stop thinking about, that I can't stop talking about, that I won't stop talking about for some time to come, most likely as well. I separated them into genre. I have 2 thrillers for you, 2 horror books for you, 1 sci-fi, and then a whole bunch of fantasy in all its different variations. This is my last video of my 2025 wrap-up. If you haven't watched the other videos yet, there's a link to the playlist down there that you can go check out after you watch this video. Without further ado, let's get into the books. We're starting with thriller, and you might already know that this author has to be on the list this year because I read a whopping 12 books by this author this year. I try to keep this list as a 1 book per author type of thing because I had a lot of authors that I read a lot of books from, and I wanted to keep it somewhat contained. So it's not all same. So that was a really hard one for this author. I already knew I wanted to do definitely one of the thrillers because I enjoyed the thrillers overall more than I enjoyed the sci-fi. Not that I didn't like the sci-fi, I loved it, but the thrillers were just, you know, that little bit better. But then it was still 7 books that I had to pick one from. And I ended up going with the very first one that I read in the year, which is When You Disappeared. That was our January book. The Year of John Mars was not only my own thing. Stacy from the Chapter Conundrum joined me and a couple of you as well throughout the different months. And yeah, When You Disappeared was the first one that we read. I will likely reread this once I'm done. We still have 2 more books to go for January and February 2026. But once I'm done, I'm contemplating if I want to reread this one to see if it still holds up after I read all the other ones, if it's still my favorite. But as of today, this is my favorite for various reasons. So with thrillers, I'm a bit picky. It has to have something unique. I have to be able to connect with a character. And then, you know, it just has to have a really cool twist at the end. And John Mars with When You Disappeared delivered on all of them. We have a 2 POV, 2 timeline story, which sounds very confusing, but it's actually really straightforward to follow. We have husband and wife, and the husband just up and left one day, and we get 2 timelines, one from the time where he up and left without a note, without anything, without a word, and then 15 years later. And we get the POV from both the husband and the wife in both timelines. So very slowly, as you continue in the book, you get to see what, you know, happened 15 years ago, and why did he disappear, and what did he do since then, and all that kind of fun stuff. This is one where a lot of people say they hate the husband, and that's why they hate the book. I hate the husband, but that's why I love the book, because it gave me so many emotions. So many things to, you know, get agitated about and get invested in. And then just the story itself was just so cool. I haven't read anything like it before, and John Mars wrote it in such an amazing way that I could not stop reading this book. I mean, that is something that is true for all of his books, to be very honest. But anyway, so my John Mars book, out of the 12, the one that I'm picking as my favorite for 2025 is When You Disappeared. In the same vein as the John Mars book when it comes to character depth, unique story, and mind-blowing twist, The Darkness by Ragnar Jonasson, which is a trilogy that delivers in exactly the same way as the John Mars book did. you have a really unique story set in a very vivid and dark Iceland with an incredible character that you get to know intimately. And that's kind of the whole premise of the trilogy, that it is, while she is a detective and she is solving murders, it is very much about her and her life. And then I picked book 1 in the trilogy. I was contemplating if I want to take the whole trilogy or just book 1. I picked book 1 in particular because the ending of this book was what completely did it for me. Like, that was mind-boggling, mind-blowing, all the mind words. When that happened, I was just sitting there like, wait, what? 2 pages backwards, reading it again. It's like, yeah, he really did that. What? And that's why I loved it so much. And then I had to read book 2 and 3 to kind of see, okay, what's next? What's happening now? Like, what do you do with that type of ending? Like, how do you continue? That's why this is going to live, as they say, rent-free in my head for quite some time because of that. Moving into the horror genre, both of these books have been incredible in their own ways, which, by the way, is the reason why I didn't rank the books, because all of these that I've read, like all of the books, not just the horror books, but all of them, everything has something so unique that made it hard for me to say like, oh, this unique thing was better than the other. It just didn't work. That's why I decided to make it just that these are all my favorites and all my gush books of the year. The first book in the horror genre that I want to talk about is Stephen King's Pet Sematary. And this book, still, it has been a couple of weeks, couple of months actually. Did I read it in September? I don't know. This book, first of all, was something entirely different than what I thought it would be. I thought this is kind of a spooky ghost story, jump scare, that kind of stuff that I do not do. Like, I cannot. You can't. No. I'm a crazy scaredy cat, and I cannot do like really spooky paranormal stories in any kind. So I was really glad that this was a buddy read at the end of the day. So I knew beforehand I have people that I can talk with about this. Turns out this is not a spooky story. Not really. There are some spooky elements in there, but that's really not the main premise of the book. This is more about emotions and dealing with grief, and in a typical Stephen King manner, watching someone do something completely crazy and go crazy because of what happened. And it was written in such an interesting way because he actually told you up front what happens. Multiple things. So there's one big event that happens towards the end, but even before that, there are like 2 smaller, still traumatic events that are happening in the book, and you know pages before they happen that they are happening. So the way he told the story was so cool, because I don't think I've ever seen something like this, where someone basically spoils the entire ending, the entire twist, and tells you exactly like, this is what you're going to see in a couple of pages, and then the story really is just about to get there. And I ended up kind of in a reading experience where I kept reading and reading and reading because I wanted to get to that point where that happens and then see how these characters deal with it. So super weird reading experience. And because of that, also a super unique and cool reading experience. And that catapulted this Stephen King book onto my top Stephen King list. So this might be my top 3 Stephen King book at this point. But yeah, that was such a cool reading experience because of the buddy read, because of the story on itself, because of how he told the story, and then that just the story itself. I mean, I love these Stephen King stories where you just go really deep with a character. You basically watch them completely lose it, and this delivers on all of the things that I love about Stephen King, and I'm so happy that I finally read it, and I will reread it again. Maybe. I say that. Maybe not. Horror book number 2 that I want to put on this list also gave me a really unique reading experience, and that is One Grim Night by Chad Nicholas, which is a dark fairy tale retelling, but done very differently. It's taking fairy tale characters and their typical traits, but putting them into a situation that they probably didn't sign up for being in. This is about Red Riding Hood, who is running through the forest. It's dark, it's stormy, it's loud, and she is being hunted by something. We don't really know what it is, but something is following her, and she wants to get just into a safe space, and she runs towards a cabin, light is on, she's frantically knocking at the door, and like, please let me in. And this old woman opens the door and lets her in, and then the story ensues. What I think is cool is the whole story happens within the cabin or around it. It's a very limited setting, which makes it very interesting because you watch the people in the different rooms and you follow them around in the cabin. And there are a lot more characters that come into the cabin as the story progresses. And then also, I had to put it on this list because it is such a visual reading experience. I felt the rain. I heard the storm that was going on out there. I heard the creaking of the board. It was so incredibly well done. Again, such a unique experience. But because of that, I had to put it on there. First of all, I love Grimm's fairy tales, and I thought the way Chad included them into the story was very creative. And then just the way it was written and the reading experience itself was so cool with this book. Moving into sci-fi. I actually didn't read that much sci-fi this year, which is interesting. The one book that I wanted to mention, or the one series that I wanted to mention, is the Verkoisigen Saga. In particular, book 2, which is Baraya or Baraya. I still don't know how to properly pronounce this whole thing. So this was part of the Backlist Book Club that Nico and I are hosting over on Nico's Discord. Well, book 1 was, let's put it that way. Shards of Honor, book 1 was part of that, of the Backlist Book Club. But we loved it so much that we continued reading the series, and we read the first 3 books at the end of 2025. And book 2, Baraya, I just keep saying it that way going forward, is by far my favorite. I had like fist pump moments, and I cheered for the character Cordelia so much because she is amazing. And the way the story was told, the way everything was happening, and just the world itself, it is so cool. This is one of those series where I'm absolutely excited to continue reading it and to read book whatever. They are like 16 books in the series or something, and continue that on through 2026. This is such a cool story, cool writing experience that you need to get a little bit used to at the beginning, but once you're in it, oh, so much fun. Fast-paced, action, smart humor, snarky characters, engaging story. It has literally everything you could want from a sci-fi like this. I have a bridge book that kind of belongs into sci-fi, but also into fantasy. Let's talk about it. I read the last Luminian saga this year. Well, most of it I read this year, and only the books that are out so far, which is 5, but the series is supposed to be 13 books at the end of the day. They were all fantastic. They are technically sci-fi books, but they have a lot of fantasy elements in there, from the magic system to how gods are handled to how the cultures and the races are handled, and it is incredible fun. It is a bit younger read, which is totally fine. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just, you know, I'm just saying it as an FYI. Because of that really fast pace, so all of these stories, you can eat them up in an afternoon, essentially, depending on how fast you read, obviously. But they are very fast reads, very entertaining. There's so much going on in that series, and we're only 5 books into this series. We're not even halfway through. But it is part chosen one, part like rebel hero, coming of age. You're exploring a whole universe, like not just one planet, but a whole universe. Like you're jumping from planet to planet in the first books. You're meeting so many different characters, and they are all so well fleshed out. Like the important ones, obviously not every side character has a full backstory, but all the important characters are so well fleshed out. They all have their unique voices, and it's just fun. Like it's just a very fun and engaging series. It's pure entertainment, and I actually would love to see a TV show with that. I would totally watch that. I think that would be super entertaining. Who knows? The author already made a comic book out of that. They made a short film in the world, not related to Last Dominion, but in the same world from what I understand. Who knows? Maybe there will be a TV show at one point. Anyway, I'm holding up book 5, which has been my favorite so far. What I loved in particular about book 5 is that some of the connections that have been built in the first 4 books are coming together, and all of a sudden you're seeing where she might be going with that. So it opened up a whole new world. And I really loved the direction she was going with some of the things. And I'm really, really hoping that Lilla, our main character, is going a certain way in the rest of the books. We will see. I will get book 6 later this year, so I'm excited to see where that is going. But yeah, I love all the all the main characters and the little group that is traveling around the planets, and there's just so much to see, so much to explore, and it's just incredibly creative. I mean, the stuff she came up with for these books, that is also one thing that I like in general about the series, is like, yes, you can see like a little bit inspirations, you know, in a lot of fantasy or even sci-fi, you see whatever, Roman inspiration, Greek inspiration, you know, that kind of stuff. This is not obvious. There's a lot of stuff that she clearly came up with herself. Yes, there are a little bit of influences of things you've seen before, right? Especially with the tropes, Chosen One and whatnot, but she packaged it up in all the right new ways to make this even more engaging. Listen, I'm so glad that I found this series. This was one of those happy accidents where I was on, I think it was LA Comic-Con, and we were actually done. We were about to head out, and we went around a corner, like somewhere really far back in the corner, and the author basically gave away the first books for free, and I was like, sure, free book, I take it. And at one point later, years later, I read it and was completely hooked at that point. Like, I pretty much binged the series. The audiobooks are also fantastic if you're an audiobook person. I don't know if audiobook for book 5 is out at this point, but definitely the first 4 books. So good. 2025 also opened up a new fantasy subgenre for me that I didn't think I would like. So cozy fantasy has been a thing for a while now, right? Travis Baldree with Legends and Lattes had that subgenre explode. I have not read Legends and Latte. I haven't read cozy fantasy in general, because every time I read what the book is about, it's like, I don't think this is really for me. But there's a subgenre in that subgenre that I'm absolutely vibing with, turns out. And that is cozy witchy fantasy, or cozy fantasy romance. I don't know what the subgenre is really called, but in general, cozy with a witch of some way or another, and then fantasy, and with sometimes more, sometimes less, a romance subplot in it. Not romantasy, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, I'm talking relationship here, and cute stuff, not smut. This book started it all this year. I've read, I don't know, 5 or 6, and it was a whole month where I read a whole bunch of this cozy witchy stuff. But this is the book that started it all. I don't even know why I picked it up, but I grabbed it from my library as an audiobook, and I was doing something. I was probably like cleaning up, and I was just listening to it, and I stopped cleaning and only listened. And I was like, this is really fun. First of all, the main character, Mika, that we have here, I loved her. She is funny, she is friendly, she is cozy, she is wholesome. It was just a whole lot of fun following her. Then the writing itself was incredibly engaging. It was just, again, wholesome and fun, and a really good pace too. Like, it was not too fast paced, but it was also not slow paced. And then the story itself was a lot of fun. Like, what our main character goes through, there were laugh out loud moments, there were very wholesome moments, there were teary-eyed moments, and it had everything, and I loved it. I loved it. I freaking loved it. And that then led me into a month whole plus. I don't know, if all of a sudden I read 5 or 6 different kind of these cozy witchy fantasy romance books, and it's all this book's fault, and I'm very thankful for it, I have to say. After I was done with this one, I started looking around, trying to see what else is out there. Esme then recommended a book to me that I immediately started listening to in audiobook format as well, which is Priests, Belts, and Bridegrooms by S. O'Callaghan and Sarah Wallace. That one, also, again, cozy, witchy, romance, fantasy, falls into the same category. That one is on the list because it had a really cool premise. This is a Bridgerton-style story where you have royalty kind of thing, and you have like that gossip newspaper and the person who writes for the newspaper, right? Similar to what Bridgerton is. That was a really crappy explanation for what that is. This one plays in the human world, like 1800 whatever Britain, but also has fae involved. And the way people learn magic is kind of in school, and then they're being graded, and depending on how they're being graded on like how good their magic is, whatever, that's kind of then the career choices that they have and the life choices they have, that kind of stuff. And there's one human that has a problem with that and wants to change that. So he puts a proposal together for, hey, what could we do? How could we maybe teach magic different to enable more people to, you know, get better lives. And then he gets paired with the Fae that doesn't want to get paired with him to solve that issue and work on a like new curriculum. And then, you know, things happen from there. And that's where the romance then comes in, essentially. Super cute. Everything about it, again, similar to the other book with the very long name that I just showed you, very similar that it had just a lot of very cozy, wholesome moments, fantastic dialogue. The magic system in this one was so cool to watch because they have to, Fae and human have like different types of magic. They use the magic in the world differently, or they create magic differently. So they had to showcase that to each other. So, you know, one understands the other and then can come up with ideas on how they can change the curriculum. So cool. So much fun to watch. And just for that reason, already a lot of fun. Now we are moving from less cozy witchy into more romance and fantasy. This is a trilogy that I binge read pretty much, more or less, in 2025. And I was blown away by that. So this, on first glance, by the way, I'm holding up book 3. This is because this is kind of the order this comes in. This one might look more like a romantasy with a lot of smut. While it does have 1 or 2 smut scenes, it's not a smutty romantasy. This is very much a fantasy story. It's a portal fantasy. Our main character, Lily, is looking for her best friend that just disappeared through the portal a couple of years ago. And one day she is, you know, riding through the forest and finds that portal and goes through as well. And then turns out she has magical abilities. She's actually someone special in that world. And she has to help that world kind of get over the issue that it is having right now. It's a Fae world, which with 4, oh my goodness, with 4 different Fae races that all have different magical abilities. And there are a lot of other magical creatures living in this world as well that you get to know throughout the series. So first of all, this has a fantastic fantasy story as well. It has like a little bit Tolkien leaning. The land has its own language, so it has a lot of cool kind of language geeky elements in it as well. And that's where the romance part comes in, has one of the, if not the best relationship that I've read in a fantasy story. This is one of those where book 1, which is Veilborn, where in book 1, you get to meet the love interest and kind of the courting and that kind of stuff. And then in book 2 and 3, you actually see the relationship develop. And that is something that in general in romance, not just in fantasy romance, but in general in romance, you don't really see that often. Usually it's till they're getting together and then that's it. But this takes 2 books to develop the relationship and shows it in actually a rather real manner, with fights, you know, with making compromises, with growing as a couple. And that was so cool to watch. And the ending, my goodness, the ending is just so wholesome again. We will stop using the word wholesome pretty soon, believe me. Some of these fantasy books are not wholesome at all, but this had such a wholesome ending. Like the way everything then came together was just so cool. And yeah, just again, a unique story in just a very cool writing style. I would call this more new adult, I think, from a writing perspective, due to the a bit spicier scenes, but still fast-paced, really entertaining. Great read. I had a fantastic time with it. And as you can see, the author sells this version with sprayed edges on her site. So we're going away a little bit from the wholesome, but we're still staying in the kind of funny, quirky, a bit more lighthearted fantasy with Slayers of Olds by Jim C. Hines. This is an urban fantasy with retired, I keep calling it superheroes. It's not really superheroes, but it is the easiest way for me of explaining this. It's actually a wizard, a succubus, and a warrior of a goddess. As you see, not really superheroes, but what else do you call that kind of group of misfits there? Anyway, the really cool part is they're retired. But then something happens and they all reluctantly decide to, okay, I guess we'll save the world one more time if we have to. Fine. That's kind of the sentiment, and it's so much fun. I mean, they love doing what they're doing. They have been doing it their entire life. There was a reason for that, right? But they were very much looking forward to their retirement, which they are now being pulled out of. This has a really great humor. There are a lot of snarky moments that were laugh out loud moments for me. Just in general, there's a snarky undertone to this story, and I love snarky stuff. So, you know, there are a lot of like little things that make this an interesting story, from like the Lovecraftian elements. There's a cat that grows tentacles and stuff like that. If you are a little bit older like me, there are annoying teenagers in there that are crazy annoying, because that's what teenagers are when you're old. There's a sentient house in here. There's a mouse colony living in the house that is just fun to watch and fun to interact with. There are just a lot of, again, a lot of little moments that make this really quirky and entertaining. And again, it's a super fast read too. It's a standalone. How often do we get that in fantasy? And it's a great palate cleanser between bigger, darker series that we're getting into now. The last 3 books, well, book number 3 is again a series. I'm sorry. I had to put the duology in here as well, because I can't really pick which of the 2 books I like better, because they complement each other really well, and they have both things that I really, really liked, and I couldn't really say which one I like best. So, but since it is a duology, and even as a duology, it's not really a thick boy, right? We count this as one book. I'm talking about the Witch Roads duology by Kate Elliott, with book 1, The Witch Roads, book 2, The Nameless Land. Both came out this year, and I had the chance to speak with Kate Elliott about the books as well, which was very entertaining. So if you want to check out the interview, I put the link down in the description as well. What the story is about, it's this group of characters that come together through not so nice circumstances, traveling a road from one end to the other. Not really. They're starting somewhere in the middle of the road, but they're traveling to the other end. That sounds incredibly boring, but Kate Elliott has a way of making this journey really, really entertaining, because through the dialogues of the characters and the little adventures that they're experiencing as they're traveling on that road, this becomes a really interesting journey. And it becomes a really interesting fantasy world, because now all of a sudden we're seeing all the politics. We're seeing what that royal system looks like. We're getting all the political intrigue between the characters that we're journeying with, but also with the big world. And that was super impressive to see that world unfold through that journey and the conversations these characters have on that journey. Awesome. Like, oh my god, this was so good. So this is mostly what book 1 is. Book 2 continues the journey, but the adventures are getting bigger, and we're actually getting to the final stakes. So this is definitely a bit more adventure driven. This is a bit more journey driven, but both books are fantastic stories. Slow paced. I loved it because of that, because it gave us more time with the characters. It gave us more time to dig into, you know, all of the different aspects of the character development, of the world, of the political intrigue, of the stakes, really. And also of that love story, I guess is how you would say that. Again, this is not a romantasy. This is not a fantasy romance. This is very much a high fantasy story, but there is a romance subplot in there that also becomes a little bit more important towards the end, because those characters that are involved in that play a very important role. And that is also something that made me put this series onto this list, because the ending of book 1 had me yell out loud. I've never sat up and yelled no as fast as what happened here at the ending, and was so glad that book 2 came out just a couple of months later, so I could immediately continue reading and figure out, okay, what's the resolution of what happened here? Are we getting a resolution? And she is taking her sweet time to give you that resolution in book 2. I'm telling you that much. So it takes a while till you see if yes or no in here. If you know, you know. If you don't, you might want to read this, because it was just so freaking good. All right, 2 more books to gush about for 2025, starting with Dreams of the Fallen by A.S. Colworth. This is a book 1 in a fantasy series that I actually don't know how long it's going to be. Is it a trilogy, longer? I actually don't know. It doesn't matter. This was so good. Dark, gritty. The conflict that we're watching here and that we're seeing evolve between the two sides that we're following. We're also getting POV's point of views from both sides is just so good, so good, so good. Like when it comes to dark fantasy, this was fantastic. So first of all, I enjoyed it again because of the way the story was told. It actually took a little while for me to get into it, and it took me to read the novella that is set before this, like a couple of 100 years before this story, and then continuing like nearly 20% into the book to fully understand what is happening and what is going on here. But once I did, oh my god, what a ride. I love fantasy stories that tell a story from two point of views from opposing sides, where it is about figuring out, okay, which of these sides is actually the bad side and which is the good side. Because I love it when you don't know that immediately from the beginning. Or if you think you know at the beginning, and then as you read the story, you figure out, okay, what is actually going on here? What is the deeper meaning of all of this? Like, what is the history? Where are these sides coming from? I think you see that across all of these books. I generally love if I get to read something that tells me where's the character coming from, what is the motivation of the character or of the race or of the side, whatever. And this one is a big masterpiece when it comes to the two opposing sides and figuring out, okay, which one is the good one, which one is the bad one. On top of that, this has some really cool elements from Roman history when it comes to Senate and how the political system is set up. It has a lot of just unique fantasy elements, like it's set in a desert, so you're riding on lizards, not on horses. You are actually seeing what the fallout of certain decisions could be. And that's where the novella comes into play, really, because the novella shows you something that happened, like something big that happened in the history, like again, a couple of 100 years ago. And this book is really the aftermath and what those two races did afterwards. Really cool. I'm really excited to continue in this series and continue seeing where this is going. If you already want to get an idea about the story, there's no cliffhanger ending. I mean, the big story arc has not been resolved, but it has a very satisfying ending where you can just pause and be good with it and don't worry about like, oh god, the next book comes in a year or 2 or 3. On the contrary, like it has a very satisfying ending, which is also something that I find very important in fantasy, knowing that there are a lot of series out there where you're not often getting the next book immediately. So I appreciate that. And the last book in this video that I need to gush about is another dark and gritty and unique. That is Benjamin Averin's new series, Venomborn. Although I find it funny that I'm putting it on a 2025 list when he re-released it in 2026. So there's a new version with a new cover out that was launched a couple of days ago. Book 2 is coming out in April, I believe, 2026, and then book 3 later in 2026. So we are getting the succession of the series really, really soon. Benjamin Averin is a favorite author of mine. I've loved his Rainfall saga. I ate it up, and I actually kind of want to reread it again, but I have too many other books on my stack. Venomborn did not disappoint. The same dark and gritty writing style, the same amazing descriptions, the same uniqueness in the fantasy world. So many cool elements in here. So Venomborn is kind of a light lit RPG. We're following Kite and Effie, who are Venomborn, meaning their mothers drank monster venom during the pregnancy, which led to them having like purple eyes, looking slightly different and having slight magical abilities. In this world, no one really knows anymore what to do with Venomborn, how to train them. They just see them as something different and are kind of scared of them and don't want to deal with them, ideally. But this world is now being invaded by a big force that no one has seen in thousands of years, and the only people who can actually figure out anything against them are Venomborn. Effie is a daughter of royalty. Kite is more someone from like a trade family. Both very different. Kite is more on the shy, quiet side. Effie is very outgoing and self-assured, and it's really interesting to see those two coming together. And throughout the story, again, there's so many cool, unique elements in here. Like Benjamin Averin is just really good in weaving in so many cool things into his fantasy story and making the characters so relatable, giving them really dark, detailed histories that make them much more impactful. Be prepared for it being dark. Especially due to the history of the main characters. There are some things that happened that just, you know, can hit hard. Might be a me thing because that topic just hits hard for me, but anyway, I find it hits hard and it makes it dark. Well-paced writing, like you just want to keep reading and reading and reading and exploring the world with those characters and exploring their abilities with the characters. And that's, by the way, where the light lit RPG theme comes in. So it's not something where it feels like you're reading a computer game, but the way their magical abilities level up. It has a level system, essentially. That's where that light lit RPG part comes in. I'm excited to, this year, finally continue with the series very, very soon. Book 2, Dream Hiker, again, comes in April. Book 1, it's the same story, just has a new cover. If you want to hear a little bit about that, you can listen to the interview I did with Benjamin. He's talking a little bit about what happened with the covers and why he's re-releasing it with a new cover. Oh my goodness, I talked for way too long. Fair warning, right? That's what I told you, to get cozy and get something to drink and, you know, turn on a candle, get comfy, because I knew I would be gushing nonstop. Now that you know what my favorite books this year were, what were yours? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear which books I need to put on my TBR next. Thank you all so much for stopping by, for listening to me gush for hours. And with that, I hope I see you in my next video. Till then, have an amazing rest of your day. Bye!